before eating, thank you to the soil. Thank you to the sun and the rain and the moon and the harvesters, the farmers, the delivery people, the grocery store stock people, that are putting them on the shelves. Cashiers that are checking it out. My partner who brought it home. It was both of us who prepared the food. It's like to bring awareness to all of those parts that brought us to this moment. Also part of celebration of all the little bits that make it extraordinary.
Gabrielle is an international artist exploring our relationship between being visible and invisible. Because a lot of times when we are living and breathing and doing our work in this planet Earth, in whatever context we are in, we sometimes have this hesitance of should I embody my fullest expression in the moment? And sometimes we will feel like maybe not. Maybe the environment is not safe enough. Maybe the environment calls for a different side of me. Therefore, my full expression is not aligned with the environment. And sometimes that comes from an innate fear. Maybe it comes from our hesitance. Maybe it comes from our resistance to be seen and to want to fit in and want to comply, whatever that we think is true and whatever we think is needed, rather than being a very full version of ourselves. So Gabrielle's work does tap into the space, not by giving us a right or wrong answer, but by creating space and holding space for us to feel safe enough to explore, to fail, and to come back up again and to continuously explore. And I think that's the magic is in the process of exploring.
Love that. I love what you said and how you put that. So I'm excited about seeing what happens today in our conversation.
Beep, beep, beep. In front of you lands a spaceship, and out walks a friendly alien. If you were to use one word, one sound, or one movement to invite the alien to play, what would that be?
I think I might hum. I might go.
I love that. I just feel like tinkling, like in my brain, because that's a frequency. I'm like,
right.
My brain is like reasoning with that.
Oh.
That's beautiful. Why invisibility? Why visibility? Why a lab?
Well, there are a lot of reasons that I decided to sort of formally look into visibility and invisibility. Largely, well, it was born from a curiosity about my own life, growing up feeling invisible in some cases, like to people who were supposed to care for me, like feeling invisible to my mother. And like, why isn't she noticing this stuff is happening? And, that kind of thing. And then also wanting to be invisible to like the sexual predators that were in our world. And discovering that I really couldn't be invisible in that case. And so it was like curiosity, like how many other people have experienced that, like both feeling invisible and also wishing to be invisible. And what were the conditions around those experiences for people? Were they similar? Were they dissimilar? Was it age related or gender related specifically, or would it be different in different parts of the world? And I was applying for grad school and I wanted a project that was quite expansive so that I wouldn't be limited to this very small box. And I was like, I will explore invisibility and we'll start easy with invisible things. Like what invisible things do we rely on every day? And then that became a fun project in itself, like its own kind of game, because, sometimes at first it's hard to get started. Like, can you name 5 invisible things that you rely on every day?
Yeah, I would think air, water. Water is kind of visible, I mean, transparent. Love, happiness, mission, joy, belief, faith. That's more eternal.
Excellent.
And the vibes from people that I connect with, the resonating feelings that as we are talking and sharing stories.
Exactly. And even earlier, you said you could feel the vibration inside the frequency, right? When I was
Yes,
like,
yes,
mhm. The frequencies are invisible. Even our words are invisible when we're spoken, right? So sound, a lot of sound,
yeah, sound.
all of the emotions. There's so many things. So that was a fun game that I first gave myself the challenge. Let's come up with 1,000 invisible things, and I chose 1,000 because A, I wanted it to be challenging, but B, I didn't want it to be impossible. Like if I said 100 invisible things, that would be a little bit easy. I mean, once I got going, it'd be a little bit easy. Uh, and then a million could be like, woof, I don't know. That would take a long time. And I have other parts of the I want to get to. The other parts of the project I wanted to get to was the creative research, like when and who has felt invisible, who has wished to be invisible. Those kinds of questions really were important to me to explore, and I wanted to do it in different parts of the world. Where I started in Berlin, and then I did some in Turkey and England and Ireland and the different places, and then also online, especially once COVID hit. Yeah, just wait for that. So I went online, and I mean, I created a survey online for people to be able to fill out, and we can put a link to that in the podcast, hopefully, and sort of get the answers that way. And then I also initially set it up as sort of an art installation where people would just come across printed sheets of these questions before I put it on the internet, and they could sit down and engage with it and fill it out. And I thought that given that there were only about 10 or 12 questions and then some demographic like questions, I thought, oh, it might take 5 or 10 minutes. But I was really surprised to see that it actually took 20 to 40 minutes for people to fill it out because there are other questions in there that we haven't really given any thought to. So that was really fascinating to me as well. And then since that time, I've created workshops and other places where we can literally engage within a container, which we might talk about later.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I'm curious, and I think people are maybe curious too, like when you're talking about this 1,000 things of invisible in our daily life, and I was listening to your soundtrack.
1,000 invisible things. Abandon, abandonment, ability, abortion, absence, absolution, abstraction, absurdity, abundance, abuse, acceptance, accident, accomplishment, achievement, activity, adequacy, causation, politics, Wi-Fi, wind, positivity, wireless connection, wisdom, wish, practice, witticism, brander, precautions, precedence, pressures, worth, pretend, wrath, xenophobia, year, yesterday, youth, zenith, zephyr, zone.
What is invisibility actually?
well, we talked about invisible things already, right? Like what invisible
Yes,
things we rely on in our lives. And my feeling is that, excuse me, once we get going and we start thinking about those things, it's sort of like you just become more and more aware of what's invisible in your life. Like we just had that little issue with connectivity. And then it was like, oh, yes, of course, Wi Fi is invisible.
life so important.
Telepathy is invisible. So, there are a lot of things that are invisible in our lives. And you named a couple of really important ones that a lot of people share, which is faith and connection to spirit, however you want to call that. And I'm reading this book on Taoism and the wisdom of Tao, and that is about energy force, right? But in terms of the personal and the social aspect, that's more like when, sort of like what we touched on earlier, in a space, a person has often said, like, well, when I'm in a space with other people, like in a meeting, and I say something, it's like I don't even exist. People don't acknowledge me. Someone else might pick up the same exact idea and state it, and then they're the ones that get all the credit for the idea. Unless someone else in the room says, Johnny just said that. The credit goes to her. You know what I mean? But not everybody will respond that way. So that's one way. Another time is people feel invisible sometimes within their own families, like someone else gets all the attention. Or on a deeper level, when I've worked with people from the gender nonconforming community, transgender folks often talk about how both family and workplace, will often misgender them or use their old names, their dead names. And that just hurts so much. It's like if you constantly mispronounced my name and I frequently corrected you, but you continued to misuse my name, I would feel like, oh, she just doesn't care, right? So why do I even want to connect anymore? You know what I mean? It creates space and a kind of isolation. And I was thinking about this. How does invisibility connect with loneliness? And loneliness is such an epidemic in our country and the world, really. And they even are saying, doctors are even saying, it's also a cause of death, that people die of loneliness. So we really need connection. And so when I think about invisibility and the work I do with the Invisibility Lab is being able to create containers where we can have connection. People can have connection with each other. People can have a deeper connection to themselves. If I'm working one-on-one, they can feel seen and heard and celebrated by me. I can reflect back to them their own brilliance and their own contributions in the world where they might not even see them. Like I felt so invisible growing up that when I returned to my hometown as an adult and people would recognize me and say hello, I was like, how is that even possible? Like I was invisible. Like, how can you recognize me? Right? I was invisible. I am invisible. But no, I mean, obviously I'm not invisible. I'm, solid. But, that feeling of invisibility often is equated to loneliness or alone. I felt alone. And actually, I know I might be digressing, but I feel it's all connected. When people talk about trauma, I learned this from Dr. Gabor Mate. He said the trauma isn't necessarily the event that happened, like the assault or the violence or whatever it is that happened to a person. The trauma comes from having no place to share it that's safe and for it to be received and held. And in my case, for example, when I told my mother something that had happened to me, she never said anything to me to sort of help me feel like, oh, that should never have happened to you. I'm so sorry. I want to hold you. I want to let you know you're safe now. I didn't get any of that. And so I just continued living my life feeling fearful of people, that I couldn't trust people, and that in fact, she didn't even do anything to address it. You know what I mean? The issue. So that just like really weighs on us. Like that's the trauma piece. And then I'm taking this from The Wisdom of Trauma, this beautiful movie that made about Gabor Mate and some of his principles. And he said that some of our coping mechanisms that we pick up, like it might be drinking, or it might be like excessive amounts of sex, or, risky behavior or overeating or whatever it is. He said, what if you could consider that vice, that habit that you picked up as your body's wisdom for keeping you alive throughout all of that happened to you? Because your body doesn't want you to die. So it's going to give you a way to dull it enough for you to stay alive. Like, wow, that is such a radically different way of looking at addiction, right? What if your addiction, your wisdom, your body's wisdom, is simply a coping mechanism to stay alive? And so once we can take the trauma that happened to us, which is invisible generally, right? Like the memories of it, not visible to anybody, but we may be feeling it in our body, in our mind, in the way we think about life. All of that is invisible and confusing, at least in my experience. And what if we're able to get to a point in our lives where we can find a doctor or a therapist or a coach or somebody who can receive and hold that and acknowledge it? Kind of like the practice you did with us earlier to get us grounded, noticing any tight spots or uncomfortable spots in our bodies and allowing the light to receive it, embrace it, hug it, and love it, acknowledge it, then kind of melt it away, right? That's a very different, that's a very healing experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when I did share my traumas as a teenager, when it was coming back to me and I started sharing it with people who were close to me, but they had no way of knowing how to receive it or respond. And so I felt like I was just talking to a brick wall. Even though they were my best friends, they didn't know how to say, I'm so, so sorry that happened to you, Gabrielle. That should not have happened. How can I would you like a hug? Or can I just hold you? Do you want to tell me more? Can I get you some help? Or, any
Yeah.
number of ways of responding other than just like a blank, like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah. I think because a lot of times we think we wanted to connect, and I think a lot of times it's difficult because we have never experienced what the other person experienced, and with this lack of experience we can try to rely on our ability to be compassionate, to be empathetic. But I think because there's a missing experience, so maybe parts of the brains were not being reactivated, the same thing, I think it's just they would not the experience to be able to relate. I think this idea of
Mhm.
relate, building a bridge to connect with that experience is not there. And because they haven't experienced that, it's really difficult for them to say, let me build a bridge. It's not even in
Yeah.
their conscious mind. I think when they hear that,
Yeah.
they're in awe, and they're in shock, and they just I think they're facing a wall too, maybe internally. I'm like, what should I do? Like in that.
Absolutely.
So we're all facing a wall to each other.
How to respond. I don't want to put blame on anybody, including even my mother. Like she just clearly didn't have any idea how to respond. And
Mm.
she wasn't in on it. You know what I mean? She wasn't maliciously enabling a situation. That wasn't what was going on for me in my case. So I've forgiven actually everybody involved, including myself, including the beliefs I held since being a child and having experiences that I had no control over. And even forgiving the people who, treated me poorly. And
That's very
and
difficult.
it's not condoning behavior at all. It's not at all about condoning the behavior. It's more about like that happened and I've since done everything I can in order for that to not happen again to me or anyone else I care about. And it's done. Like I don't need to carry the shame of that anymore. The shame actually belongs on the perpetrators and I'm not going to carry that anymore. And wishing someone ill, like, something bad to happen to them because they were this way doesn't, in terms of frequencies in my body, doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So when we talk about frequencies and emotions, wishing something bad upon someone just has like a, a really bad low frequency, like a bad
Yeah.
feeling. So
Yeah.
that's
It's like
what
kind of like
forgiveness is about.
it's like dragging us down to fit in that frequency. And that's a trap too. Like that means we cannot let go. We cannot surrender. We hold this strict
Yeah.
view. We enforce a lot of things on it. So it does the opposite of freeing us. Instead, they just lock us back in. I once heard a story. I don't know where the story come from. It said there are two types of wound. One is if you get hit by an arrow, that's a physical wound and hurt. And then the second wound and hurt comes from us dwelling on it and ruminating on it, and that creates actually more lasting damage to our body and our psyche. So how I think also this all the kind of like religion at the core level is to help us always be reminded of our authentic beingness, no matter what that means, and not get trapped back to dwelling in the second type of hurt and damage within us. And so we can create a sort of release. However, we still hold people accountable to whatever in terms of consequences and to prevent future, like all the strategies that we've been talking about still valid. I think that's more happening internally on a psychic and psychological level. And I think when you're talking about the invisibility, I think our audiences may resonate, like typically in a family actually, when you spend most of your time and energy with, and especially with mama and papa. And I think sometimes we feel like they just wear a tinted glass when they're talking with us, even though we're being together all the time, and the feeling that part of you are not being accepted or being judged, I think is big. And you mentioned about our body trying to numb us and help us to survive. I think that's something we all, to some degree, carry. I think it may come from their unwillingness to surrender to what really is there. With their own biases. I think we all have those biases, and I think the biases creates the hidden parts where we are not able to see the other person, even ourselves, I think.
Right, right. And, so many people who experience trauma and haven't been able to work through it or find other alternative, healthier ways to process it and clear it, acknowledge it, process, clear it, learn other coping strategies, then they continue to sort of wear this mantle of shame. And then it's like the trauma defines them. And it's like the trauma definitely impacted my life for sure, but it no longer defines me. I'm so much more than that, so much more than all the stories that are attached to the trauma that happened in my life, so much more than the wounds and the damage that happened during those times. And in fact, I'm at a point now where I can say, because I had those experiences, I am able to be more empathetic with people, more compassionate, more loving, more kind. I can hold space for people who've been through hard things, can have, a lot of awareness, like I can help people regulate, unregulate, co-regulate with me. If they're
Mm.
moving into like a hyper active state, we can calm together. We can get to a place where we could be like, okay, let's take it in tiny bits. We don't have to go through all of this together in this one sitting, if you want somebody to listen, or to learn like the coping strategies that I was talking about for grounding and not letting the shame and the trauma define a person. Like we can move beyond it. It really is possible. And that's our purpose. Like it is our purpose to get through all those things, and they're there to help us become the people that we came here to become.
Yeah. And that
That's it.
brings my thought back to the experience that you created. And I noticed on your settings, as you set the stage, the space, there are empty bottles. And then people get to like write down something on the empty bottles. So what is that intention of the empty bottles? And also how did people respond as they write things on the empty bottles? Is that part of the design to transform? Is that part of design to create space? Yeah, how does how does that work?
Yeah, generally I leave it pretty open. So on the form, the survey form, there's a picture of a jar, and you'll see that on the
Yes.
website when you go through it. And there's a label on it, a blank label, and people can write what invisible thing do they want to contribute to the archive of invisible things. And so people can interpret that any way they want. Sometimes they want to put something in there that they never want to think about again, and it should just be pushed away, right? Another thing might be like something so precious to them. Like I remember one young woman said, the scent of my grandmother. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Like, of course, why wouldn't you want to pull up the scent of your grandmother, you know? Yeah. So I try not to orchestrate and direct too much the things that we're exploring because I trust in the magic of the universe. I trust in the magic of a person coming forward and what occurs to them is right. Just like with events, like I can have a workshop and I could have 40 people show up or could have 4 people show up. And I can know because of my experiences that it is so perfect that these 4 people showed up. It's perfect. I don't have to feel bad about not getting 40 people because I know this is going to be really valuable for the people who are here. And so I think that has to do with invisibility as well, like the powers, the invisible forces that help create experiences for us. So that's where I went with the bottles on the labels, the empty labels. People can interpret it however they wish,
Yeah. And sometimes that reminds me, just in our daily life, we can keep an empty bottle on our desk or by our bedside and put a sticker there and just based on how our day went, write it down and say, hey, today I have witnessed or I have captured this invisible love today, and I'm gonna keep it with me for a bit, and then I'll release it back to the universe. And that allows us to make invisible visible. And in return, help us to acknowledge, validate the beauty, most likely invisible beauties that's being taking place in our mind, and also find a space to put in those invisible hurts, those micro traumas or macro traumas that we experience, the hurt that we experience, the disappointment that we experience, and give them a space rather than as a first step, rather than relying on others to process that first with us. We can process that within ourselves first. And that process is magical, I feel like.
I agree. I 100% agree. Being able to acknowledge something that may be unnameable for years, finding emotions within and then being able to describe them or come up with like, what is that called? I don't even know what that emotion is. And then, bit by bit, we can take the steps towards healing. It's all towards healing. And the jar question, I just remembered this other thing. Someone shared with me one time that they know somebody, or maybe they practiced it themselves. Unfortunately, I can't remember who it is, but they had a joy jar. So they had a jar and the family would be like, they'd put a slip of paper in. What brought you joy today? And that was a really fun process to have a whole collection of
I
joy.
love
And then
that.
they could just go back and, yeah, joy jar.
Yeah. And people can fold stars and fold birds in there, and
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful. I think I used to do that when I
Yeah.
was little. I have a jar and I collect candy wrappers, and they're so
And that
beautiful.
would be
I would
great.
hold it against the sun, and each candy wrapper just gives different colors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So good.
And
So
yeah,
good.
so good. And then let's kind of dive into this like conundrum, this like dilemma in the experience. First, thank you so much for inviting me to one of the Invisibility Lab experiences. And I think in that experience, I've noticed that we share this common conundrum or dilemma where one part of us wants to be seen, wants to be acknowledged and validated, and the other part of us refuse to be seen, feel risky, feel a lot of fear, feel a lot of internal judgment. And how should we integrate those the two desires that seem so contradictory to each other?
I think it really comes down to it's a place-based answer. So in other words, the desire, the longing to feel seen and heard and celebrated, we all have that. Our human hearts feel so good when somebody really sees us and we know that we've been heard. And even better if they're like, I celebrate you for blah, 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 whatever it is, like for sharing your feelings. I celebrate you for showing up today. I celebrate you
Mhm.
for um, giving it your best shot. It doesn't matter if it was failure. I don't even consider there is failure. Everything helps with the learning, right? So if somebody doesn't get the outcome they're after and they feel like they failed, it's like, let's reframe that because actually you only get to the success if you learn along the way. So any failure is really just another step in the learning. And why do we crave this sense of belonging? I think that goes back to early evolution. We could not survive on our own. We had to be. We only survived by being in groups. And then there's this sort of survival piece that is like, oh my God, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to be, abandoned. These are really core issues that we have as humans. I believe probably most of us have those desires and fears. So there's that. That's the longing. And then there are different degrees of being seen. Is it like fame? Like, do you want to be famous and seen like on a stage in a big way? Or do you just want to be seen in your community as a person who, has integrity and has some really interesting ideas or is a wonderful artist or whatever it is? Like, not so much fame, but just acknowledgement and respect. The
Mm.
respect, I think, is a really key element of seeing and being seen. Now,
Mm.
the desire for not being seen, the desire for invisibility, I think pretty much across the board is about safety. Like, is it safe to be seen? And sometimes it is legitimately dangerous to be seen in some situations. That's why a lot of trans folks are in great danger all the time because our society does not embrace and accept and see them as souls on the earth expressing in a different way than other people
Mhm.
do. That's it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I wish we could all see each other as souls first in human bodies. It doesn't matter what shape, size, color, age our bodies are. We are simply souls. And so wouldn't it be wonderful? It would be just like, Johnny, oh my gosh, you're a soul too. That's so cool. That's so funny that you came in this way. How'd you come about making that choice or whatever, And just being fun with it instead of judgmental. That's my fantasy world. That's the world I would love to create and live in. However, it's
Me
not
too.
the world we're currently living in. So the
Yeah.
question around safety has to do, first of all, our physical safety. I mean, the visibility piece. How many women have walked down the street and had cat calls, guys catcalling them or worse, really assaulting them. So many. So there's a legitimate reason to want to be invisible. And I celebrate that. That's wisdom. Now, if the desire or the fear of becoming visible is more around, it's not about that. It's not a dangerous situation where we need to be cautious. It's more a situation of like, being a podcaster and being seen. I know so many people that want to do podcasting, but are really afraid of being seen. They want to be coaches and they're really afraid of getting their voice out there, their magic out there. And that I believe has less to do with danger and safety issues. I think it has more to do with believing that they have something worthwhile to say. So it has more to do with worth, self-worth. And they might totally believe in what they're doing and then just be afraid that someone else is going to just be like, what do you know? And why do they have that fear? Probably because they experienced something like that when they were younger. And so another thing I like to do sometimes when we do discern that that is the issue, that it's not about safety, but it's more about just being like knocked down, dismissed, knocked down like metaphorically, like not to
Judged and
judge.
ignored and being,
Yeah. So then what I
wow.
like to do, yeah, in a case like that, if I'm working with somebody one on one, Actually, it could even be done maybe as a group. And if you want, we could even try it right now.
Oh, sure. Didn't expect that coming, but okay, sure. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so imagine a time when you felt, wait, let me just think for a minute. All right. Imagine a time when you felt really seen, like really seen for who you are and not necessarily celebrated, but it was totally okay for you to be you and all of your you-ness. And just nod your head when you feel like you've found a memory of that. Beautiful. Now take a breath and let that go. Beautiful. Now bring in a memory, recall a memory where you felt completely not appreciated for who you were being, for who you are, like dismissed, judged. And if you have a moment that you can remember in your history, just bring that to mind. Nod when you have it. Okay, great. So now I'm going to ask you about that memory. Do you see it in your mind's eye as a video or like just a moment, like a photograph?
A video.
Okay. So now I'd like you to keep that video, but speed it up. Imagine it's the same video, but it's just going like really fast. And then imagine it going backwards and playing backwards. And then imagine the sounds involved. If there are people talking, were there people talking in that memory saying something? Then imagine them saying it really fast, like Mickey Mouse speed. And it sounds really ridiculous. And then imagine them saying the same thing really, really slowly. So that too sounds really weird. And now, when you think about that experience, I'm curious, does it have the same kind of charge, the same kind of negative charge to it? Or has it lightened a little bit?
I think definitely lighten a little bit. I was like,
Right. Yes, yes, yes. So that's a little game that I like to play sometimes with people. Like if there's a particularly tough memory and it's hard to get beyond it, then there's a way we can play with it so that it no longer grips us and holds on to us in the same way. And what are we talking about here? We're literally talking about something that's invisible.
mm,
And isn't that amazing? That's a memory that is invisible, like it's not currently our reality, can still have a grip. It can have its talons in us, like something,
yeah.
it hurts still. But what's possible when we can like loosen that, lighten it, and just be like, oh, that no longer has any hold on me at all. And then in terms of the positive memory, we could do the same thing. You could speed it up, you can play it around, you could do that if you want to. And that actually I would probably only recommend doing if it was like something that we were really just so committed to repeating and we just had to have in our lives. Like we have so much invested in that happening again, which could also hold us back in a way, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm reaching for this high, extremely amazing thing, but anything that falls short of that doesn't count. And then we're dismissing all these other things that are actually good things. Do you follow what I mean? So then you can have these two experiences. You can think of it on the left and on the right. If you sort of envision them actively in your mind and you take a big deep breath in and then you imagine them merging together, you can tell me what's happened between the two. Are they super like black and white or are they like kind of blended?
It's like a wave. It's kind of like moving now. So they kind of like go to the left, go to the right, left, to right. So it's kind of like part of a movement in a way
Yeah. It sounds like they're kind of dancing together or within the same.
together.
Yeah. And then, so picture, I'm going to take this another step. So picture the really positive memory again and just sort of feel into that as strongly as you possibly can. Just make it as real as you can. And then you can just say something about it. You don't have to say it aloud, but just, something about it, like the feeling in your body or an image or a sensation or the emotion of it,
Laugh.
Great. And now you can take a breath and let it go and return to the other experience that was sort of the negative experience and bring that up as real as you can now. I know we've dissolved it a little bit, but bring it up as much as you can into your memory, into your experience. And then when it's kind of at the max, you can just say something about it again, an emotion or an image or something that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Okay, great. And now
Okay.
bringing them both again into your consciousness, both experiences as real and as strong as you possibly can together at the same time. And take a big deep breath in and tell me what happens between them on the exhale. Are they the same, different, more blended?
I think it's both. I'm able to see the good and the visible and the invisible, and I also able to see as they blend together. I can hear the sounds. So it's all depending on what my mind wants to do, it's all available there. This is how I feel now. It's like
Yeah,
I'm like an editor in a way, like I'm editing. So depending on how the story wants to be shared, all pathways can be actualized. Because I'm the editor, I can just edit.
yeah, that's right. You have choice. You have
Choice,
choice.
yes.
Sometimes our experiences, our memory, our traumas, our minds, it feels like they have control over us. Our feelings have control over us and we don't have any control over them. However, when we do some of these exercises, we get to experience two opposing emotions even, or memories in your case. And then we get to see how we can move from one to another pretty quickly. And then we also can discover like what actually doesn't have that big a hold on me anymore. Like that's entirely a choice.
By guiding me through, I get a sense of agency. I get a sense that I'm the editor and I can have full agency to decide how I process that. And it does not invalidate any of those things that already taken place, but it's helping me as the editor to really regenerate a narrative that's more empowering per se.
Exactly. Exactly. That's beautiful. And that's how we
Yeah.
help
So
people feel seen,
that
right?
is how we help people feel seen, is that
Like, tell me your
mm,
experience or tell me how you're feeling. And we don't even often need to go into this. Like, I have no idea what you just were processing, but you
yeah.
do. And I held space for it, And so, yeah, I love how you put that. You discovered that you're an editor, you have choice, you can move between different states of feeling. We can feel really excited and we can feel really calm. We can feel really frightened and we can feel really confident as an exercise. And that tells us we actually have a lot more agency than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, and I think in that particular moment, for a moment, I really feel like, oh, wait a second. Well, even though that's an experience where I feel unseen, but I don't mind to come back and re-experience it again because since I'm the editor, just like rewatching the content again, and I get this sense of gratitude. Is that, well, I mean, if the universe only gives me experiences where I feel seen all the time, I probably get bored very fast. And I think because of all these situations where we feel unseen, that makes the situations where we feel seen more valuable, and the variety itself adds the magic to us being human and living a human experience.
Right, right. And going back to what we were talking about a little earlier about where it is that we feel seen or unseen, and asking ourselves, what's the cost of not being seen in this space? What's the benefit of not being seen in this space? And choosing, just like you're able to have agency over how you're feeling, we can have agency about, if we want to be seen more at work, for example, then it's up to us to bring that forward and find ways to do that. And if we also at the same time know that it's not safe to do it in another location, for example, then we don't do it. The most important thing I think is to make sure that you do find some people where you can totally be yourself with. And my goal for the Invisibility Lab is to create more spaces where people can be seen and heard and celebrated and known as their full selves. And it's okay if they cannot be that way all the time at home or at work or on the streets or whatever. It's okay. It's okay. Can you be that way, in some spaces? Because that's when we feel most alive.
Yes, yes. And sometimes people may think, well, this should be a conversation that happening in a therapy session, or are we entering into this therapy session? And I think therapy has its space, and think conversations like this is to acknowledge that we are all human, and it's not any type of sickness that you need to seek for the sort of like therapeutical correction through therapy as if something is wrong with us. I think this is a type of conversation that we have permission to have in a casual and situations like this, like a podcast conversation or like a casual conversation that we have with a friend. We don't have to stick any sort of
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
tags or things around us and say, oh, I'm going to therapy to solve this particular challenge, to reach this particular outcome so I can get measured to show improvement. I mean, that's like, I mean, it has its space, but I think the life is much bigger than that.
Yeah. Magic can happen anywhere, I think.
Magic can happen anywhere. Yeah. Yeah. So for entrepreneurs and startup founders, leaders who are leading innovation teams in a organization context, I still refuse. I still kind of resist to think in terms of like organization, because it's organized by a power structure, a kind of like structure that's there. What I tend to think is it's ultimately a group of people, and they have this internal agreement of work in a particular rhythm, a speed or a sequence. So for those type of people who have more resources to cultivate opportunities and resources to make everybody working together feel seen and feel visible, what should people do? How should it be done in a community, in a group of people?
I think that's such a great question and a big one. And I'm doing like retreats, staff retreats, and bringing some of that Invisibility Lab experience and giving people the opportunity to learn about each other, to learn more about each other than what they would typically learn in, the boardroom or in the, what do you call those? The little cubicles or at the lunchroom or
Physicals,
whatever.
yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful thing when we can connect with people and learn more about each other. Yeah. There are some games, I call them games because I like games, where we can ask people, So my worksheet, for example, has all of these questions that people can see, like, what did you answer about? What's your biggest concern in the world? And then, that opens up a conversation like, oh, my biggest concern is, the health of my aging mother. And then another person might be, oh, my biggest concern is the rise of nationalism in the country or in the world, and not make it a political discussion, but just to be like, oh, yeah, tell me more about that. How is that impacting you? What does that look like in your life? To not have it be like a debate. It's about getting to know. It's exploratory. So how can we create spaces or as a way to get to know people and not judge them?
It's as if we're given, I think in the daily times, it's all about work, doing the work, hitting the KPI, make things happen. We have this big dreams and all that. And ultimately it's a group of real, authentic people that's making things happen. And because what we think is more important takes more space. And having the agency an opportunity to say that, wait a second, let's take a pause. Let's create a space that we don't call it summit, We call it retreat. Let's create a retreatable space where we come in, and the only goal is to explore, to find the interesting aspects of people that we surround ourselves with on a day-to-day basis, trying to commit to this big, audacious dreams of changing the world, of building a new world, and ultimately it's me, you, he, her, them.
Right. Yeah. And we're exactly, again, like all the people who are working in corporations are also souls in human bodies. And they have concerns, they have dreams, they have wishes, desires. Um, there are places where they feel nervous. There are places where they feel seen and comfortable, And so I think it's really valuable to get to know people more. That's how we create connection. That's how we get to experience ourselves as being seen.
First, create a space that it will call a safe space. That's so
Right, yeah.
beautiful. We've in this almost an hour of time, we've covered a really kind of a wide spectrums of topics surrounding the idea of visibility and invisibility. And we talk about what is visibility, what is invisibility. We explored situations and examples of where we feel invisible, where we feel visible, and that invisibility can carry with us at any time, in any situation, even in families, even around people we really love and people who give birth to us and who help raise us.
Yeah.
So it really, it's kind of like this, our ability to connect and our ability to disconnect. I think that's so common. And we also talk about how the key of it is to create a space and to design some sort of instruction to guide us to process both situations in a way that it gives us agency and ideally restore us to this observer's perspective, because ultimately we're all observers, to really look at the experiences from an editor's perspective and see, okay, great. So we have this invisibility piece, we have this visibility piece. Now putting them together makes this story more engaging and worth living. And we also kind of elevated that into specific context, like working in a corporate situation, working in a startup situation where it's not just us, it's a group of us working together, and those intricate dynamics can potentially create opportunities for us to feel seen, unseen. And then it's important for us to create a safe space to retreat into a space to explore and ask each other questions and stay curious about each other. Moment that they feel seen, moment that they feel unseen, and maybe bring back this idea of this empty bottle. So we have two empty bottles, one is seen and the other one is unseen, and they can bring those bottles with them at home too, so they can re-edit what happens and or has happened without going into an extreme of distorting the realities and all that, but acknowledging what happens and then process in a way that feels agentic, and in the end gives us hope and encourage us to continuously experience, no matter if it's seen, no matter if it's unseen. It's all part of life we sign up for. What did little Gabrielle enjoy doing when she was maybe 11 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old?
I loved exploring things. I think I'm very much an explorer. I'd go outside and just sense. I think I had a relationship with invisible things, but I might not have called it that at the time. And then I did a lot of drawing. I did a lot of, art and coloring and I don't know, pretending, doing things like that. A lot of like little girl things, I guess. But tracing animal footprints in the sand and sensing a being that had just been in that space, that kind of being with nature, being with myself, exploring.
What do you think is magic? Is magic those invisible things? I'm just what is magic?
Well, magic, I think the magic here is the noticing. When we notice the flower, then suddenly we get to have an experience with the flower. Like, look at the color of that flower. Look at the fuzz on that bee in the flower. Like it becomes like a whole wonderland of discovery. It's like, oh, wow, I pass that every day. I never even noticed. Like you said, I took it for granted. But wow, what an amazing world we live in. And hearing so much bird song around here, it's just amazing. So I feel like one of my specialties, one of my special gifts is planting seeds of awareness. So when people can start noticing, notice what's invisible, notice what's beautiful, notice what feels good, notice when you feel alive, notice when you feel constricted or contracted. It's all information, it's all part of the research of how we can be more alive in our life and really enjoy it fully. Because if we're just taking everything for granted, then there's not a whole lot of enjoyment happening.
It's supposed to be all about enjoyment, and even
Yes.
in challenges, that's a different type of enjoyment. Even sometimes tragedy happens to us. I mean, it's hard to enjoy, but it is an experience, and it is a type of experience that we get to be in. And I like how you're saying that the magic is our ability to notice. I think awareness is the beginning of everything.
Everything. And we talked briefly about this. So I remember that about the little prince, the story of the little,
Yeah.
and the fox's secret is that one can only see clearly with the heart, and that what is essential is invisible to the eyes. Thank you.
I think just hearing you say that feels like an invisible hug, like
Mhm.
calming and hugging and warm. Now all of a sudden, all the invisible things become visible now. I pay attention to my awareness is at I start seeing, and sometimes if I cannot see, my heart sees, I feel, and all of a sudden a normal life feels it has more depth, it has more dimensions, it has more texture, and everything is worthy.
Ordinary becomes extraordinary.
The ordinary becomes extraordinary.
That's how we make the invisible visible. It's just acknowledging it, noticing with our
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the childlike wonder when we were little kids. If we still remember, everything is new. We experience everything for the first time. We take the first goggle of air when we were born. If I remember, I don't remember, but I could imagine. We practiced our vocal cords the first time when we come out of our mama's womb and
Yes.
crying, and our first time experiencing tears coming out, our first experience feeling touch, people hugging us and soothing us, and we feel our first experience of kiss. They kiss us on our face, on our lips, on our forehead, and we feel the first experience of taste. We drink milk from our mamas or a milk bottle. We feel how food tastes coming through our mouths into our stomach and through our body, and we experienced our first experience of pooping. So we poop, we process everything and we poop them out.
Yes.
It's all like an adventure. It's like,
It's a
have my first poop today.
exactly. And then, like, when you come to the present moment as adults, and as you said, like, how much is it that we take for granted? So I recently started trying to, before eating, not just say, blessings on this meal or something like that, but even like, thank you to the soil. Thank you to the sun and the rain and the moon and the harvesters, the farmers, the delivery people, the grocery store stock people, that are putting them on the shelves, cashiers that are checking it out, my partner who brought it home. It was both of us who prepared the food. It's like to bring awareness to all of those parts that brought us to this moment, to this morsel of food, is also part of celebration of all the little bits that make it extraordinary.
Yeah, it's all a collaborative reality. Say thank you for the people who stock this inventory. I've never thought about them. Like now, yeah, it is part of the process and even the supply chain. Like when we think about supply chain, this is like code, like language, supply chains. It is made of people who carry things from point A to point B, and there are many people all over the world helping to carry things from point A to point B, that this thing comes to us and we get to enjoy its presence. We get to enjoy this moment of being together. And it's like, yeah, the supply chain is full of people and doing things and helping to make things happen.
Exactly. And if you think about this moment right now in our country, in the United States, where the farmers who have been bringing us food all along suddenly are afraid to be seen because they might get snatched up by ICE and then taken away and deported or whatever it is that's going to happen to them. And it's like everyone is crucial, and no one deserves to be treated that way. And so and actually that's when this project started, was in 2016 when Trump was running for president the first time. I was very aware and worried about my brown and black friends and family members. And I was like, oh my God, this is, talk about wanting to be invisible, but still desiring to be seen and respected and cherished and free, to go about your business and support your family and, drive your car and pay your taxes and all the things. But suddenly we have so many people that are terrified of being seen. And how is that right? How is that right? So what can I do in this moment today to, at least when I see people, let them feel seen and appreciated? Because they may not be getting any of that right now. But that's something I can do. My heart is big enough to love more.
Yeah. And it all comes from this healing within first, to fill our own containers full of love, light, forgiveness, gratitude, joy, and then visibility. And then just naturally it flows out and embrace more, and it drives us to do more, to be more, and to help more. And it all comes from that inner visibility and invisibility to
Yeah.
come together.
It comes from the heart. It really comes from the heart, right?
Oh, it's such a beautiful conversation. Oh,
Much.
I'm just so happy just by talking on this. Like, it's so beautiful. And also that reminds me, because I think maybe because of the way I was trained, I always try to think, what would devil's advocate say in that particular moment? And something that comes to my mind is like, it's like, Gianni, Gabrielle, you're just living in your echo chamber. Like, that's great. Like, you get to like just not see everything that's happening. And I think my response to this voice is that, yes, sometimes echo chamber is important. Echo chamber provides safety, provides space, provides visibility. And I think the world is made of and harmonized by people building their own echo chambers in a very open-hearted way rather than a controlling way. And that's a different topic. And that creates islands of cohesion and echo chambers of cohesion. And that's how Mother Earth vibes, right? Now I feel like I want to dance.
Yeah. Yep. Islands of sanity, whatever that means for each, for people in their lives,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Gabrielle, for providing us this opportunity and this excuse to explore this idea of visibility and invisibility. And I hope this conversation will reach you wherever you are all over the world. What type of religion we decide to carry, what geographic locations, what kind of food we love, what we don't love, what kind of TV shows we don't love, what kind of political parties we decide to align with or not align with. All these are important to some degrees, but not as important as we're all this beingness, this soul, and going through an experience.
Thank you.
Mm.
Been amazing. With the technical
And for our audience, yeah, no, there's a lot of technical difficulties, and Thank you for the Wi-Fi to helping us sustain until the end of this show. And for those who would like to connect with Gabrielle, I will include her bio and her social links and websites in the show notes below. And she's having some upcoming programs experiencing the vast magic of Antarctica. And so more of those informations and media resources will be updated on her site. So I hope this conversation reached you at a time that you were able to witness and co-witness that experiences with us together as well. Thank you, Gabrielle, for this beautiful space. I'm having a lot of fun.
I can tell, and I am too. It's very fun talking with you, Jenny. I hope we have lots of other conversations as well.
Yes,
Very fun.
let's make it as an ongoing one. And maybe in the future we can collaborate and do a retreat together. Be fun. Like a
I like that idea.
collaborative retreat.
Yes.
It's in
Good.
there.